All right, everybody. It is August in the NBA. Usually we get zero news, but the Celtics gave us a few nuggets this week. We got a Joe Mazzulla extension. We've got George Niang, how we barely knew you, out, and Chris Boucher in. We've got one of our favorite guests joining us. Baraheni is with us. Let's get into it. This is Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. It is a Sunday night live on YouTube edition. What is going on? NBA summertime, but we have actual news to talk about. And as always, this is your boy, Will Weir. How you doing? How you living? Joining me, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Menegas. Happy Sunday night to you, Greg.
Happy to be here, man. You know, we were having a little bit of an existential conversation before we hopped on here. So who knows where this podcast is going to go? I'm excited to be here, though, dude.
We got deep before we did our little like pre-show meeting here. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this rolls into the vibe. But one of the best vibe guys in the business, one of our favorite guests to have on this show. He is one of the co-hosts of the Athletics NBA Daily Podcast and a contributor for Raptors Republic. Our guy, Baraheni. So good to see you, man. How's your summer been?
What's up, man? Yeah, summer's been good so far. We got into our existential bag like T-minus 5 minutes ago, so we're locked in, ready to go. You know, deep conversations in August. That's the vibes. You know what I mean?
Hey, we always say off-season podcasts here. They get weird, right? Like they're meant to get weird. Like especially when you get to you get in August with the NBA, you get to early September. It's like, man, there's like 6 weeks where there is just straight up nothing, and you are scratching for content. So let's hope this gets a little bit weird. So we'll see where this goes.
I did 15 minutes on massage etiquette last week. So
nice.
I don't know where you stand. I'm just gonna ask you right now because I'm interested. Okay. Are you a massage guy?
I've had like 5 massages in my life, I think. Okay. All like in pain because it's been like post-injury or something. You know, you got like a calf strain or something like that, or I've had to like post knee surgery get my like knee working back again, so it's like getting into my hamstring and my LT band or whatever it is. So painful is how I remember all of my massages. But so I don't know what is the etiquette? What is the thing you guys were discussing?
So one, we were just talking about like if you go to a spa, are you like boxers on or boxers off?
Oh, boxers on, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Hell yeah. Oh, of course.
So you're not going bare ass on the table under the sheet.
Hell no. Absolutely. Okay. Wait, if people do that, I'm double layering my boxers from now on.
Well, it's listen. Here, I'll say this. This was my stance on it's situational dependent. Right, like if you go,
it gets. There's moisture, you know what I mean. Your ass could get wet when it's the freaking seat too, and it's like the leather. The leather.
You know they can clean it, right, dog? Like like if it's a really nice spa, they got like good stuff. It's not just like they take like a little like what you take in the kitchen and then wipe off the counter. Like they got next level stuff. If that's
I'm just saying, look, if you're in a massage for an hour, you know what I mean, it could just get uncomfortable. You know what I mean. At least with the boxer, you got like a layer of comfort there for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was hashtag unintended slippage at my massage last week, and it was awkward. It was very awkward. So we did 15 minutes on massage etiquette. Fair. So who knows where we're going today?
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Damn.
All right. Well, the box is open, and speaking of vibes that get weird, you know. As I originally reached out to you as soon as the Celtics signed Chris Boucher, which we will get to, you know, that was the original, you know, hey, let's get you on here, Raptors guy, insider info. We're going to get there. But in the last couple of days, we got some, like I said, speaking of weird, we got Joe Mazzulla news. So let's start with Joe Mazzulla. Crazy Joe Mazzulla gets a multi-year contract extension, which in the most Joe Mazzulla way possible has been left entirely ambiguous. Houston can scour the internet. No one's talking about how many years or when it starts. It's I don't understand. It's just a very Joe Mazzulla thing that I'm sure he's eating up, loving, and can't wait to answer it in a non-answer way come the regular season when he starts getting asked about it. But Joe Mazzulla, only 36 years old. 182-64 regular season record, 33-17 playoff record over 3 full seasons as the Celtics head coach. Game 7 NBA conference finals loss year 1, NBA finals year 2 champion, and then last year, of course, loss in 6 games to the New York Knicks. Just give me your unfiltered thoughts. Joe Mazzulla getting an extension. Feel right? Do you have any worries about it? Where are you at with this news?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys think, because obviously you guys are in the know when it comes to Joe more. But from an outsider's perspective, I think this makes sense, just because, for all intents and purposes, it feels like it's going to be a bit of a gap year for the Celtics. Hashtag Darren Peterson. No, I'm playing. But I've seen Celtics fans talk about that, so it's natural to bring up. But I know it's a gap year, and I know the expectation is to compete as soon as Tatum comes back following this season. And so you lock in a coach that has led you guys to a championship. I think it makes all the sense of the world. Also, I think the brand of basketball that the Celtics have played under Joe Mazzulla is very modern, in the sense that, like, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to get you to a top 5 offense, basically just through math and through finding ways to win the margins. That's a good coach to invest in moving forward for the future.
Yeah, and I think with Mazzulla, the thing that I've been impressed with is just his ability to become more self-aware, throughout the years, going back to year 1, where he just looked so uncomfortable anytime he was in front of a microphone. He clearly was thrown into a situation that he wasn't ready for, and he learned a lot year 1. He was extremely stubborn during his first year with the Celtics. He's continued that, but he's also learned from his mistakes to some degree. The biggest one being more willing just to call timeouts, right? That was like that's like the lowest hanging fruit Celtics fans can talk about with Joe Mazzulla is he willing to call a timeout to stop momentum? Does he believe in momentum? All those kind of like basketball myths that are out there, that like, does momentum actually exist? Joe Mazzulla is starting to just kind of figure out the ebbs and flows of a season, the ebbs and flows of a game, and how that can change in the playoffs this year. Like this year, it was not so great.
I was gonna say,
Joe Mazzulla
my guy could have used the timeout at the end of game 2 against the Knicks. There probably was a good time for a timeout right there.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So, like, from an outsider's perspective, as just like when you watch the Celtics with Joe Mazzulla, I have 2 questions for you. Do you enjoy the product, and do you believe in the product?
Oh man, so I know there's a lot of conversation about like the product and what the Celtics have done for the brand of basketball in the NBA and whatnot, but I don't subscribe to any of that, to be honest with you. I think they play the style of basketball that suits the players on the court. Like Tatum and Brown, both very good isolation players, both guys who can get to a bucket. And though they basically work off hunting mismatches, drive and kick, creating opportunities to create more open shots for their teammates. And then it's just 3-ball array because of the fact that they're so good at driving and then kicking the ball. And when you have like this 5-out system that they've been able to establish, and players that adhere to that system when it comes to Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, guys who can really space the floor in their positions, it just makes sense for them to play the brand of basketball that they had. To me, it was a lot of coaches struggle with this. And I think this is something that's really clear in the NBA now too, where it's like, you have to coach the players that you have on your team. You can't coach the way you want to coach. And I think Joe Mazzulla has kind of realized that over the course of his tenure with the Celtics. It's like, hey, we have this team that can work in this offensive system. We have Tatum, we have Brown, guys who can really work in isolations. How do we maximize that? It's the way that they're playing right now. So I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that like they are ruining basketball or anything like that. In terms of like the enjoyment factor, I'm sure just like you guys, I watch so much basketball, specifically NBA basketball, that if I'm not enjoying watching the Celtics, I can flip the channel and go watch another team. Can it become monotonous at sometimes? Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. They're not playing Indiana Pacers brand of basketball where it's very, very random constantly, and you don't know which way they're going to go with what direction. I think the league is sort of trending towards that, but that's not to discredit Boston, who has an element of randomness and kind of like flow to what they like to play as well. I think that it's just a different version of that. And honestly, like basketball should come in all shapes and colors. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't matter what the brand is or how the style is. I think it's cool to just see different teams try different things, you know?
So one thing I want to jump in on here is when you were talking about, Mazzulla and his brand of basketball and playing to the roster, right? Like, I think that's a really interesting point for Joe Mazzulla. And, as you were going through the list of players, you mentioned Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, Jason Tatum. None of those guys are going to be there for this upcoming season.
True. Yeah.
And so this is kind of, number one, let me just get it out of the way. Mazzulla clearly has earned this multi-contract year extension. Like I think the NBA has gotten too far away from guys like Mike Malone, even Mike Budenholzer, who I don't love. It's like these guys are winning championships and they're out a year and a half later. Like, I don't know. I like that the Celtics as an organization are really big on continuity and stability, because I think that goes a long way, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So for that, 100% like on board. But I kind of do have some reservations as to, I think Mazzulla, to what Greg said, we've seen a lot of growth and development. I certainly don't think he's a bad coach. How good of a coach he actually is, I kind of don't know. Like all 3 years, even in the first year, which was completely unfair to really judge him as hard as he probably got judged. But when you have a championship ready team, kind of happens that way. Like all 3 years, the Celtics have unquestionably had a top no worse than 4 roster each and every single year. And like I said, you mentioned a whole bunch of guys that to their skill set, they really matched with Mazzulla ball, his math ball, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it or dice it up. This year coming up, like to me, I think Mazzulla might be the most interesting part of this gap year for the Celtics. Is how much does he as a coach, how can he elevate this group? Because I don't think they can play they can't do a 1-for-1 of how they played. Even though we'll talk about Boucher, he is someone that kind of fits that mold of coming in with maybe allowing them to still play double big. But how does he adapt? And that's where, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, I still have some reservations, but I think that's going to be probably for me the most interesting point of this upcoming Celtics season.
Yeah, with the roster, and you just look at like the top 6, 7 guys, and you compare them to the methodical players that we had previous years, right? Jrue Holiday, very methodical. Jason Tatum, the alpha, very methodical. He's one of the most methodical players out there. We Kristaps Porzingis, who plays, at a very slow pace. Al Horford plays at a very slow pace. And then when you look at the team that they're going to throw out there this year, right? Jaylen Brown loves to get up and down the floor. He's always a league leader in transition. He's kind of held back to some degree playing in Tatum's shadow, just because it's not necessarily the best style for him in terms of like where his strengths actually lie, which is in transition. He's developed a lot of his game just to kind of fit in around Jason Tatum. And Joe Mazzulla has run a lot of offense through Jaylen Brown to fit his strengths. And last year with the knee injury, we saw a lot more Jaylen Brown playing out of the post. He did really good at drawing double teams and being able to kick that ball out and play that methodical style. And he's kind of was starting to trend towards like more DeMar DeRozan, when he's definitely more of a transition player than that. And then when you look at, Derek White gets up and down the court, Peyton Pritchard gets up and down the court. There's like all these guys out there that would definitely thrive more in an up-tempo style. So that's probably the first thing I'm really going to be looking at when you think of Joe Mazzulla and coaching to the roster that he has. What are the adjustments that he's actually going to make to the play style? I'm glad that we're talking about this, because I haven't, gone this deep into my basketball brain this summer. So I'm excited to really go into it.
I'm like dusting off the cobwebs in my mind to just try to like
little behind the scenes here. I literally, before we got up here, I looked at the notes, Greg. I saw you added a couple other things that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. I opened up NBA.com just so I can look at the teams, just to like have something to reference as like, okay, let me get in my headspace here of who's even on team right now. So it's that part of the offseason. But I think with Joe Mazzulla, it'll be interesting to see. He's become, to Greg's point, he's really become a very fascinating guy to follow. I know I've heard you guys on the NBA Daily before kind of get into some of the Joe-isms. We have a video that we keep updating with all of his.
He's incredible.
His quote machine.
Yeah, he's incredible. It's just so fun to watch. I mean, what was the latest? There was something he said recently that was kind of funny. I can't even remember, but
he says a lot of stuff.
Every single time he opens his mouth to say something. I mean, his practice is just a shoot around, like post game, pre game, in scrums, doesn't matter. He always has some kind of just, I don't even know. Have you guys seen who's the Timberwolves assistant coach? Micah Nori. Have you seen his halftime interviews that he does?
I have not.
I haven't. No.
So when you guys get a chance, go do it. And like everything to him is like an allegory. You know what I mean? He'll be like, yeah, we got to do this because we're two fish in a pond or something like that. You know, he'll and it's just
he tries to be the Theo Vaughn of the NBA, just have like a random
just
saying
have
that goes
some random saying. It just doesn't make sense, and it's incredible at the same time. So Joe Mazzulla is a lot like that too. He's just incredible quote, man. My God, those like the media folks in Boston must be like, all right, what's Joe gonna say today? You know, that's the
and
way
it's funny because half the time he doesn't say shit. Like he's actually saying a lot, but sometimes he just is saying his own thing that's not even the question that's asked. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, and that's a separate part of the Boston media with Joe Mazzulla. When you're winning, everything's great. But if it's going to get weird next year. So we'll see if it's
Let
still
me ask
like
you that. Like, do you think because the expectations are that they are not going to win a ton next year, it'll be more of a, because like, Derek White's starting a podcast. I saw someone else is starting a podcast.
Jaylen Brown's about to be a streamer.
Jaylen Brown's about to be a streamer or whatever. It feels like everybody's gotten the memo that, hey man, we're gonna take we're gonna take a year off here. We're gonna chill. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping, but like it feels like the weight has been lifted off of everybody's shoulders to kind of relax a little bit more. I wonder if we get a more relaxed Joe Mazzulla. You know what I mean?
I can't even picture what a relaxed Joe Mazzulla is. Like, I mean, to your point, one of the
back
stories
to the massage talk. You know what I mean?
Joe Mazzulla is not a massage guy. I guarantee that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think, it's interesting because we've been talking a lot about that, just like covering a team that has championship expectations and just like the grind that is, that expectation. It was just like every single day, we're just like trying to manufacture content because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is a championship. So for us, even as like content creators and guys covering the team, it's just like frees us up to talk about so much more and to kind of dive deeper into, the Jordan Walshes of the world and, Neemias Queta and people like that, and really look for these smaller incremental steps towards progress, where in the past it was just like, if we're not focusing on a championship, what are we even talking about here, especially coming off of a championship?
I'll tell you guys right now, as someone who has been doing the incremental stuff for the last couple of years because of the Toronto Raptors, God, I can't wait to be back into the competitive spheres things. Oh my God, to break down real winning basketball.
Is the play-in considered competitive sphere? Is that
at this point? Yes, man. At this point, yes, absolutely. Why not? You know what I mean? All respect to the 14th and 15th guys on the bench, but like, my God, sometimes it'll be nice to crack the rotation and see what happens.
It's a grind. We'll come back to some Raptors because I do want to talk about. I think the Raptors are actually pretty interesting, and I mentioned this in the last show, and this is, we wanted to have any excuse to bring you on. What we're going to transition to here was perfect. Was that like the Raptors and Celtics have kind of a similar problem where it's like, hey, we have 7 real NBA players, and then just a mystery beyond that of whether or not we even have NBA players. And if we do, maybe we'll be better than we think, and we'll have a little bit of depth. But we can get into that conversation here in a minute. Let's talk about the other news that the Celtics had this week. Celtics make a trade and a signing. Let's start with the trade. George Niang, Greg's boy, George Niang, out to Utah, the beef that never was. George Niang in 2 seconds to Utah. RJ Lewis, a two-way player, rookie out of St. John's, who started at the U, and by that I mean UMass. Shout out to the Minutemen. He's coming to Boston. Greg, before I get into the signing here, any final thoughts on the Greg Maneikis, George Niang beef that never got the proper momentum it deserved?
No, I mean, I'm just glad he's gone. He's never gonna suit up for the Celtics, man. I just don't like the dude. Peace.
Are you aware of this, S? That like not just Greg, but there's a large sentiment of or a large portion of Celtics fans that were pretty pissed off that George Niang was on the Celtics.
Is it just because of the game that he had against y'all? Like, is that what
he
was
grabbed Jaylen Brown's knee in a playoff game?
That's what I remember. That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's the big one. And then he's also just, I think he's like, I defended Grant Williams for several years while he was on the Celtics. He's got that kind of vibe where it's like you talk too much and do too much for where you are in the pecking order.
Right.
I don't know. He's got a punchable
Apparently, I mean, maybe this is wrong. I have no idea, but from like everybody I've heard, he's an awesome teammate. You know, like I have heard that, so I don't know if that's necessary. Because once he got traded to Boston, I'm like, oh, I guess they're like getting like a vet guy who'll be good for the locker room, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I don't know, man. Y'all front court situation is really interesting to me. I know we're gonna get into it with Chris Boucher, but just generally, I thought Georges Niang fit the hey, let's chuck threes and like let's get our 3-point volume as high as possible, just because he can do that. He can space the floor. He's like a bigger body too, so he can play a little bit up in position. So I was surprised that they went for that, but also from everybody I've seen on draft Twitter, this RJ Louis guy or RJ Louise, Lewis, RJ Lewis,
I think it's RJ Lewis. Yeah.
To be honest,
RJ Louis, RJ Louis. I like it. I like it. We'll make it fancy.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but okay. RJ Lewis. I've heard that just from Twitter. I've like seen people rave about him. So maybe y'all got a gem. Who knows?
Which is interesting because he literally just went undrafted like 6 weeks ago or so, you know what I mean? Like 8 weeks ago. So
but then you know how draft Twitter is. Everybody finds their guy that they love. Yeah.
I can't believe I had him ranked as the 57th prospect and he went undrafted. What a disaster. But yeah. So we'll see. Another two-way guy for the Celtics to take a look at. They did just actually rescind Miles Norris, who's also on a two-way. So it looks like RJ Louis and maybe Amari Williams will be on that other two-way.
Really disappointed his name is not RJ Louis. It's so much cooler. You know?
To be honest, I'm not even positive. Like honestly, more the news was going to be Georges Niang out and Greg not getting to continue his beef with him. That was the news. It wasn't really about RJ Louis. So, but I'm going to call him Louis for the rest of this podcast. But
we have a comment. Well, we have a comment from our producer Alex in the chat. He said he had a bad tournament, but he won Big East Player of the Year. He likes to pick up. So as someone who does not watch college basketball myself, I'm going to take Alex's word for that. So I like to pick up. And Alex, do you have any news on the pronunciation of the last name? Just put that phonetically into the chat. That would be appreciated.
So that move, Georges Niang again, 2 seconds out to Utah. RJ Louis back to the Celtics. And that led to the next move here, which is where we got to get the inside scoop from US. Chris Boucher in on a 1-year, $3.3 million deal. He comes in now, and as I mentioned before, Celtics have maybe 6 or 7 real NBA players. Basically, him and Niang switch spots. Boucher, potentially a starter for the Celtics in Raptors, in his time with the Raptors. I didn't realize this until the trade. Leads the Raptors in almost every bench category that really exists out there. So let's just set the stage with what do we need to know about Chris Boucher?
Man, he is a beloved, like, fan favorite. He was the last bastion of the 2019 Raptors. Like, he was the final guy that was on that Raptors team. Very cool story just from being I believe a DPOY and MVP in the G League. So like he kind of had to grind his way up to be able to get an opportunity. Played really well for the Raptors in the Tampa Bay season, shot the lights out, and got a contract.
I completely forgot you guys played a year in Tampa Bay. What a weird world that was.
It's good to not remember, to be honest with you. But yeah, he shot the lights out in that season, and he got awarded a contract for it, basically a mid-level exception type of deal. And he's been on that over the last couple of seasons or last few seasons. He's super important just because he's been kind of like the connective piece for them. He's also been in and out of the rotation because the Raptors have been in such a weird couple of seasons because they're, at least the last couple of seasons, it was all right. We're trading our guys. We're trading the Siakams and, OG Anunobis of the world. And we're heading in towards this retool and rebuild. And so we don't have space to play a Chris Boucher as much because not necessarily in the long-term picture for the Raptors. And then once they entered the retool and rebuild, it was like, well, we have these young guys. We're going to prioritize developing some of these younger players, getting a Jonathan Mobo some opportunity, getting Kelly Olynyk some opportunity so they could trade him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was just one of those situations where he was in and out of the rotation constantly. Some of that, truthfully, is because he makes a lot of mistakes defensively. For as talented of a player that he is wildly sporadic, and he's just chaos-driven. And I say that in the most complimentary way, honestly. Like, watching Chris Boucher when he's on is special to watch because you're like, this is this is the reincarnation of Kristaps Porzingis. You know what I mean? Like, because he's banging threes, he's blocking shots, he's a great weak side rim protector when he wants to be. He's attentive. He's a good offensive rebounder, good at crashing the glass. All of those things kind of fit the description of what Boucher at his best can give you. Good cutter too, really good at moving without the ball. So generally, like, that is the good side of Chris Boucher. And then the other side, the reason he's signing here for the vet minimum is the fact that, like, he makes tons of mistakes. He's 32 years old, and, like, while he probably could be a good piece for a playoff team, a good, like, 9th, 10th guy, I'm kind of curious to see him with more opportunity here in I was about to say in Toronto, in Boston. It's weird even to think of him being in a green jersey, to be honest with you, but I'm kind of curious to see how much opportunity he'll get with you guys. What it means for him in the rotation, like how many minutes is he going to play? The fact that he can space the floor, the fact that he can be a weak side rim protector. I agree with you earlier mentioning that, like, you could play double big lineups and you can play a little bit bigger with him, but it's more chaos. It's a lot of chaos. You're going to have moments where you're like, oh my God, what was that play? What was that possession? What were you doing? And then you're going to have moments where you're like 11 points in 2 minutes and you're like, okay, we're having a Chris Boucher type of game. Let's do it. You know?
It's going to be tough, Will, if we put out a double big lineup of Keita, who is very Chris Boucher-esque in the fact that he makes these unbelievable plays but can't make the most basic defensive rotation. Jaylen Brown, who just has a reputation of just, like, falling asleep on the weak side, where you have to just, like, put him on the ball. If he's not the point of attack defender, he can be a liability. And then Derek White trying to clean up everybody's mess. Like, it's going to be.
And you went from Drew Holiday to Anthony Simons.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I literally, because we haven't even, like, introduced him in a press conference, I, like, completely forgot we had Anthony Simons.
Well, I mean, you might not, they might trade him again. You know what I mean? Who knows, right?
So that's another part of this fast is, like, where does Boucher, you mentioned, like, where does he fit into this rotation? And from a distance, I'll say this as far as, like, my own opinion of Boucher has always been, he feels a little bit more theoretical than actual as far as, like, how good he can be. I also believe he's part of and I should have thought about this more, my all illusion team. When I see he's only 6'9", he looks like, if you just were to watch without knowing anything else, you can't look it up on the internet, like, you just be like, oh, that guy's clearly 7 feet tall, with, like, how long he is and, like,
he is
the way he moves.
He's definitely not 6'9". There's no
right, but that's what it says. It's like,
this guy, he is not 6'9".
Okay. I mean, listen, I'm just going off Basketball Reference here, where they got him at 6'9", and Rob Williams, former Celtic, was the same way to me, where he was like, I think he's like 6'8", 6'9", Greg. Like, he was, it was about Tatum's height, maybe a little taller.
Yeah, it's a Hakeem Warwick build. You know what I mean? With this guy, like, long and spindly, and it's just like an illusion. I like that, the all illusion team. Well, I really like that.
Yeah.
We gotta flesh that out more.
One of those mirrors, in the circus or whatever with fair, and you're like, okay, what am I looking at here? That's what it is like with Chris Boucher, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and so to your point, like, when it's cooking, it's like, you're like, yo, this dude's got to be an unbelievable, player. Which I also, it feels like he should be younger than 32. Do you guys realize him and Peyton Pritchard actually played at one point on the same Oregon team? Like, that's pretty wild when you think about, and I know Peyton went for 4 years, but even still. And so I actually do have a quick trivia question based on his age, because it always shocks me that he's 32 years old. So, Greg, if you're looking at the notes, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but okay. So S, I'm gonna give you 4 guys here. I just want you to try to rank them for me from youngest to oldest. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So obviously we've got Chris Boucher. I'm gonna give you Steven Adams, Andre Drummond, and Montrezl Harrell. Rank them from youngest to oldest.
Okay, youngest. Actually, repeat the 4 again. Sorry, we're August.
I got
August
you
here. Yeah,
it's all good. We got Boucher. We've got Steven Adams. We've got Montrezl Harrell and Andre Drummond.
Okay. Steven Adams is the youngest.
Just give me the 4. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Okay. Adams, Drummond, Boucher, Harrell.
Wow. So Montrezl Harrell is actually the youngest out of these guys right now, and he's in the big 3. This is why he jumped out to me. I saw him in the big 3 earlier this week or last weekend. So it actually goes, Montrezl Harrell is the youngest out of this group. Andre Drummond is the second youngest, which, by the way, I only know this because I was looking this up today. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Andre Drummond. Today is his birthday. He turned 32 today.
Wow.
Steven Adams is the second oldest. He turned 32 last month. And then the oldest of this group is Chris Boucher. Like, I don't know. That's those are some guys. Again, this is like another version of the all illusion team, the all fake age team, the all misaged team, misinterpreted age team.
That's kind of funny. So like I was doing a podcast like a month ago, and someone was like, yeah, you know why people kind of are weird about DeAndre Ayton? It's because he looks older than he is. You know, he's like 24, but he looks like he's 30. And so
he's got the Greg Oden.
He's got the same thing as Greg Oden does. Yeah, man, that's crazy to me that Montrezl Harrell is the youngest of this group. He is washed then.
He's the young buck at 31. He isn't even 32 yet, but he's in the big three hooping it up.
That's crazy, man. He is turbo washed for his age. Shout out to Sixth Man of the Year on Montrezl Harrell, man. Wow.
And Will, by the way, looking at the notes, I was interpreting it the other way, so I would have gotten it wrong.
Yeah. No, honestly, I set up the notes for it really strange. So it's I was trying to, once I saw you were in there, I was messing around with it. But anyways, I just think that's a fun fact about Chris Boucher that I don't think he feels like he's 32, but he's a bit older. And so now I think we start to get to where do we see him in the rotation. And my gut reaction when they signed him is, he's going to slot right into that power forward spot. He'll probably be the starter along with Neemias Queta. Then I kind of started looking at Boucher, and now that you mentioned that his best year ever was that Tampa year, and it's by far like his best year is that Tampa year where he actually finished 8th and 6th man of the year voting. Now I'm like, maybe he just needs to stick to the bench role, because other than that bubble season or the second post bubble season, he's mostly been a guy playing 14, 17. He hasn't played over 20 minutes a game since 22, 23. So I'm curious, you've seen him play the most out of the three of us. With the way that the Celtics roster is going to be so janky, do you think starting is the best for him, or should he continue his legacy of being a guy coming off the bench?
I think it probably makes sense for him to come off the bench. I'm just looking at the depth chart right now on ESPN, and it has Sam Hauser slotting in at 4. That probably makes the most sense to me with Neemias starting. I mean, it's a small team that's like
that's really small. That's why I'm thinking of it.
Yeah. You have one huge guy, and and then the rest of them are like really, really small. Like defensively, obviously there's going to be concerns for that type of group. I think Boucher can provide a little bit of punch on the weak side, just rim protection wise, size wise, offensive rebounding wise. So I can see him cracking the rotation and staying in the rotation. But in terms of like minutes per game, like probably, I don't know, 15, 20 a night, I could see that. That probably makes sense for me. The other thing with Boucher, which is kind of funny, is I wonder how much they can weaponize his cutting, because he was really, really excellent off of the ball and just cutting into open spaces. And I feel like that's kind of, they're leaving some meat on the bone there. The Raptors were, at least, when they had him, where I think the Celtics might be able to weaponize it a little bit better with their offensive firepower, with Derek White, with, Anthony Simons, Jaylen Brown. It's just about those guys making the reads, And I think that's one of the questions that I have for the Celtics generally is like the playmaking on this team. Who's going to be the playmaker? Who's going to be the guy? I'm sure that's a question you guys have too, but feeding the other dudes, right? Feeding a Sam Hauser, feeding a Neemias, feeding a Chris Boucher, like those guys have to get opportunities too. I think Chris will be in spots where he can excel. It's just about, like, again, harnessing that chaos truthfully. And that's why I think he probably makes sense coming off the bench,
Does he factor in much as like a pick and roll screener with like any vertical spacing, or is he mostly just off ball in the corner?
He can. You just need a really good guard. Like the best he was as a roller was playing with Kyle Lowry, and Lowry would just kind of like spoon feed him opportunities. Really find him in the right spots. So like, to me, that's the main thing. It's finding a good guard that he can match up with. Mostly he is a pick and pop guy though, right? Like screen, pop out to above the break, knock down that shot, or space to the corner, which I think will be important for the Celtics offense in general. He's good at hitting those corner threes. Even last year, he had a stretch before the All-Star break, before they shut him down, basically, because they were looking to trade him. in January, basically for the last like 20 games before the All-Star break, where he shot like 45% from three. He was an absolute flamethrower. So when he's on like that, he's able to space the floor at an amazing rate. And I honestly think the Celtics do a good job of getting the most out of their shooters. Maybe that's not the case this season because they've always been such a high caliber offense with Tatum. If that's still the MO, if they're still able to churn out a good offensive team, I think Boucher will benefit just from being the other guy that can take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, you mentioned the Celtics guards, and I'm curious to get your outside take on this. I feel like leading up to the start of the season, if Anthony Simons is still here, this will be probably the most debated question until we start playing preseason games is who should start, Peyton Pritchard or Anthony Simons. I'm just curious to get an outsider opinion. Greg and I haven't really delved into it too much. I feel like I could honestly make a case either way, but I'm curious to get what your
question
would
be.
I like getting Peyton more opportunity because I think there's more there that meets the eye as an offensive creator, as a guy in pick and rolls. He was outrageous last year as a guy coming off of screens. I think it was like number one in the league in terms of percentage or like a number of points that he scored coming off of screens, which is absurd. So he's already got the off ball stuff down. To me, it's like, how much more juice does he have on ball to create for himself in pick and roll situations? To your point, I think, the playmaking might be able to pop a little bit more. And I can see that being a weapon. I would like to see Peyton Pritchard kind of utilize more this season with the extra opportunity. That said, I do like Simons starting because he's a little bit taller, right? If I'm not mistaken, I feel like he's a little bit taller.
I think he's like 6'4", right?
He's like 6'3", 6'4", yeah. Right? And so that might give you – he's 6'3", right? That might give you a smidge more positional size. For what it's worth, I think Pritchard is kind of underrated as a defender. Like, he gets into people. He's a good point of attack guy. Obviously, like, the size is a factor there, and he can't be a guy who can switch much, but generally, like, solid at the point of attack. Simons is not that, but he does provide you some positional size that might help with your overall scheme. That might be a little bit better for that starting unit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to me, it's just about long-term investment, and Pritchard's the guy that you're invested in, right? Simons is probably a rental. You don't want to I guess the argument would be, put him in the starting lineup so you can flip him at the deadline. But with Pritchard,
I was gonna say that would have been my opposition argument for it is to build up that value,
right?
Knowing you know a little bit more about Pritchard and who he is.
Yeah, I just think Pritchard hasn't had the opportunity to be a starter, and anytime he's gotten the chance, it's always been, against, as Jaylen Brown said, we would just run the offense through Pritchard against the Pistons, but and he just goes crazy. But at the end of the year, Pritchard, whenever he starts, look at his numbers for game 82, he averages 35, 10, and 10. He just puts up insane numbers whenever he starts. It's going to be different, 82 game slog, but the guy I've always compared him to is Fred VanVleet. Your boy. I think that he could be a Fred VanVleet type player if given the opportunity. So I want to see that out of him. I think this is a big year for him, Derek White, and Jaylen Brown to show what they can do when they're asked to level up, and this is their opportunity to do it. It's a gap year. Why not?
Yeah, and also that's why I think we haven't seen a Simons trade yet, because you can kind of test out your options throughout the season. And to your point, you can make a decision at the trade deadline what you want to do, right? If Pritchard is popping off, then now hey, we've got this guy who not only is going to be a starter for us for the rest of the year, but he's going to be long-term a part of this championship core when Tatum comes back. And so you become more confident in being able to flip Simons for something else when you know what you have in Pritchard. So maybe, to your point, starting Pritchard immediately makes sense. Also, Simons off the bench with more opportunity, just kind of giving him the free reins to cook against bench units. You might see his numbers actually pop off more. The efficiency might be a little bit better for him. So that's the counter argument to starting him is off the bench. He might just be able to feast against worse players, and it'll give him a little bit more pop, which
right. And then with that, if you think of his contract, right, and teams that are going to be looking for an Anthony Simons, I doubt someone's going to be you know what, let's take a flyer on Simons as a guy that we want to sign long-term versus a contender that looks at him as oh, this is the missing piece, but he's not going to come in and be our starting two. He's going to come in and be our sixth man or seventh man off the bench, right? So that you got to think of it that way as well.
That said, like, this is a guy who I'm just looking at his numbers now. Like, over the last 3 seasons, is basically averaged 20. Like he can get to 20 pretty quickly, and like he's obviously a superb shooter, so that matches what the Celtics want to do on that end. I think my question is like, man, you know what's funny? I've actually always thought the Raptors would be a good fit for Simons just because they've needed a guy like that. But now they have Quickly as the guy.
Right.
I feel like teams would be interested in Simons just because of what he provides as a shooter. And contenders, I'm thinking of like the Nuggets, if they could match salary somehow, some way. Like I don't know if that's possible, but I'm just thinking out loud here. Like there are teams that would want his skill set. So you definitely are going to be able to get something for him if you decide to trade him. I guess the question is like, are you investing in this guy to be a part of your core moving forward? Maybe he pops off. Maybe he's the guy where you're like, with this added opportunity, he's now shooting 40% from the field. He's averaging 20 for this team. He's winning his minutes. Then you're like, all right, cool. We'd be willing to extend Simons. It might flip and be that other situation.
Yeah, I think with Simons, it is going to be an interesting case, and just trying to understand the way it feels like Brad Stevens moves. He's not gonna lose an asset for nothing, right? He's going to find something, it feels like, just based off his MO. So whether that's trading him by the deadline, or I think even trying to find a way where he's like, maybe he extends him, and I don't know all the extension rules of when a guy can and cannot be traded, but extend him at a certain point where it's like, okay, this is a salary match guy that we can use when we start to look ahead to the Tatum return sometime next year, and we can use that slot, because I think Simons is going to be one of these guys, and we're going to get to the Raptors here in a second, because I think they have several of these guys where they're just like really interesting contract cases where it's like, you're not bad, but are you that good? Like, are you good enough for that amount of money if you're really building a championship team? And it's this really weird balance that the teams have to kind of figure out, especially in this new CBA. But before we get to the Raptors, I did want to ask you one last thing here. So NBA.com had it was a poll or an article that came out, and they put the Celtics as 12th in the East as their prediction. Celtics fans in general, Greg and I talked about, there was a poll from Celtics blog about a week or two ago. It's kind of all over the place. Like, could they be, the most optimistic are still thinking there's a chance for 1 to 3. I think they're fucking delusional.
That's nuts. Yeah,
that's not happening.
Yeah,
4 through 6, I can get there. I don't think it's happening. I can get there. 7 through 10, I think, is extremely realistic. 11 and beyond is all right. Then we're tanking for AJ. We're trying to get some Mavericks luck here. Where do you assess the Celtics in that? And I'm curious to see where your answer is, because I think them and the Raptors are going to have some alignment of where they are in the Eastern Conference hierarchy.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I kind of was doing this thought exercise myself like a week ago, where I was just kind of ranking it because I was bored as hell because it's August. I was ranking out just like the Eastern Conference to see, okay, like what is the tiers? You know what I mean? So I had New York, Cleveland, Orlando in a tier of its own. I had Atlanta, Detroit, Indy, and Milwaukee as that next tier. And then I had Miami, Boston, Philly, Toronto in that other tier. Chicago would be at the bottom with Charlotte, Washington, and Brooklyn. And so that group of like Miami, Boston, Toronto, Philly, I just have no read on because we just don't know. And
I said last episode, let's just
not
kick him
looking
to the side. Let's just kick him to the side. I don't know what to make of them.
Yeah.
You want to have a player ranking? Let's put Embiid to the side. We get it. Like, if he plays, he's good, but who knows?
Yeah. You tell me tomorrow the Sixers are winning 50 games because Embiid has a healthy season. I won't believe you, but I wouldn't be shocked. You know what I mean? And so like, I just don't know what to do with the Sixers. I'm just putting them there because they're there. You know what I mean? They exist. For the other teams, truthfully, like, you guys are really interesting, and we've kind of talked about it because there are a couple of guys who could pop off with the added opportunity. Like, if Jaylen Brown takes another step in his career, if Derek White takes another step and like has an all-star level season, he's had multiple all-star level seasons already. Like, does he get the love to be an all-star? I think part of that will depend on winning and how much the Celtics end up winning in January or up until January. Peyton Pritchard is a great question. Anthony Simons is a great question. I think it's like there's opportunity there for a couple of these guys to have good seasons, and that will determine whether you guys are 10, 11, 12 or 6, 7, 8. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think teams in your position, teams in the Celtics position, typically will assess things as they go. And I hate to be the cop-out answer here, but like if it's January and they're looking at, they're kind of like 9th or 10th in the East, and they're like, man, we could just backpedal out of this and end up with a 5% chance at going and getting, a Darren Peterson or a whoever, right? I think they probably take that opportunity, because that's usually how these teams operate. I mean, we saw Philly last year do the exact same thing. Now, granted, they had more kind of pressure on them because their pick was top 7 protected or something like that. But that actually provides you guys more incentive, because you have your pick. It's yours to do with what you will. So like, I guess I'll throw it back to you guys. What would you guys want to do? Because even if you decide not to draft whoever it is in 26, that is an asset to which you can use to upgrade the team with Tatum moving forward. You know what I mean? If it's like the 9th pick in the draft, funny enough, because, obviously you guys had the opportunity to trade for the 9th pick this draft, but, if it was like the 9th pick in the draft and, you could package 9 and something to go out and get something substantial to pair with Tatum moving forward, I don't know. Maybe that's something more worthwhile than drafting the guy at 9. This is now all hypothetical, and we've already fast tracked to 2026. But
yeah,
curious to see what your thoughts are.
Go ahead, Will.
I mean, I think my biggest thing is I'm nervous for the upcoming Jaylen Brown season, because I think Greg and I talked about this a little bit. There's a pendulum swinging of Jaylen Brown and just the way people view him. And obviously we have a very strong affection towards Jaylen. Like, that's our guy. That's our guy no matter what. But the outside noise does get frustrating sometimes on Jaylen Brown. Sometimes it's accurate. Sometimes it's painfully accurate. And you're like, okay, I guess that part is true. But I think, if the Celtics are somehow a 4 through 6 seed, I've said this a couple of times, he's having an all-NBA season. Right. Like that's part of the path. He's doing that. And then to the Joe Mazzulla conversation earlier, we're feeling pretty good about him as the coach. Like that's the path, the main things that have to happen for the Celtics to end up in that 4 through 6.
Sure.
What I want, this is part of why I like this Boucher for Niang. I think Boucher's, I just don't like Niang, but I like Boucher in as a quality player, because I think he might mesh a little bit better just with the length. Maybe I just was worried about how small we were. And I want to give Jaylen Brown a chance to be the one and to be successful in that, for him to get some flowers, because if the season does go the path of where, and I think you were spot on, where if we get to January and we're hovering around 9-10, like in my head, I was just thinking like, yeah, that shoulder impingement that Derek White kind of has, but not really. Maybe we just like sit him out an extra week. And was that a Peyton, did you just slip in the weight room? Yeah. Let's sit you down for a week. Like that type of stuff is going to start to happen. It's probably the right call, but that also means that, Jaylen's not really elevating this team. And I don't even know how fair that's going to be, but that's been Jaylen's whole career. Some of his criticisms are fair, some are not. So I want to give Jaylen a chance, first and foremost, to try to take this team past their expectations and see what happens. And at the end of the day, the lottery odds are evened out. Like we see the Mavericks fall ass backwards in the Cooper flag, right? So that's kind of the idea, is like, let's go for a 6 seed with this team and let's see if we just have some fun. And then worst case scenario, like if we're hanging on the edge of the play-in, let's try to drop down to 11, 12, and maybe we get lucky and move up. That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, and we'll hit on it. Jaylen Brown is the swing factor here, right? If Jaylen Brown plays to the level that some Celtics fans out there believe that he can play, the Celtics could still be pretty competitive this year. We have a more realistic view of Jaylen's ceiling as a player. I think the world of Jaylen. I think he could be, an all NBA second team, third team guy. I just there are some Celtics fans out there, as you wouldn't believe it in the comments. There's just people that truly believe he's the second best player in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season, that he's better than Tatum. Those narratives still exist out there.
Nice.
And respect, nice. Respect to those people. If that's truly how they feel, Jaylen's your guy, ride or die, go for it. I'm interested because we've been talking with you for many years now, and we date this back to the Jaylen Brown versus Pascal Siakam and who was the better player. You were leaning more towards Pascal. We were obviously leaning more towards Jaylen. This is 2021, 2022, whatever.
Two latest Eastern Conference Finals MVPs. Look at that.
Right. We've been 2 really good years for this argument. Yeah.
So where are you on Jaylen Brown right now?
with comparing to Pascal?
No,
just
general.
generally.
Yeah.
Because I was ready to jump on the Pascal bandwagon again. Man, Jalen's a really interesting player. I think.
By the way, real quick, I feel like you already answered that question because you told us where the Pacers rank in your tiers. They're also missing an All NBA player, and so just I don't know that may be our answer.
I will say I think the Pacers have a little bit more infrastructure and depth compared to where the Celtics are right now. So that's probably why I have that. But also a very intriguing team in terms of like who might pop off and just be a guy for them next season, because that might dictate what they do too. Who like Jaylen Brown in general is exceptional playing off of another really, really talented player, in my opinion. Like, obviously, we've only seen him do that in his career. And so that's what provides the allure for some of these fans, right? It's like we've only seen him play off Jason Tatum. We've only seen him play off these other guys, even when he was younger, right? And so how does that work in a context now where he is the guy? I think I'm very curious about the ball handling, as I'm sure a lot of people are. I'm very curious about the playmaking, and I think those are the two main questions for Jaylen moving forward. The three-point shot and the consistency with the three-point shot will be an intriguing thing as we kind of track throughout the year. But generally, I think he's a guy who will be able to score a lot of buckets in a variety of ways. How much you value that versus like how that particularly impacts winning. I think he's a winning player in the right role. Maybe he's going to be punching above weight a little bit this season just because he's going to be doing more than he ever has. If he takes that opportunity and thrives with it, then you're looking at a guy who's taken a leap in his career. Then you're looking at a guy who's like refined his ball handling, refined his playmaking. The three-point shot, especially the pull-up, is more consistent. Those are the three things that will swing his season to be, like you guys said, maybe potentially an All-NBA guy. I'm more curious about like, can he find a different level to next year, or sorry, the year after when Tatum comes back? Okay, you have another wrinkle to your game that pairs well with the main guy, which is Jason Tatum. That's mostly what I'd be looking for here in a quote unquote gap year. It's how are you going to maximize your opportunities to just be a better version of yourself when the main guy comes back?
Did you see the NBA's top 10 Eastern Conference players for this upcoming season?
No. Where was he ranked?
8.
Okay. Do you know who was ahead of him?
It was Giannis. I think they had it Giannis, Brunson, Mitchell, Paolo, Cade, Embiid, Mobley. Was that it? I think that was it.
Wow. I mean, yeah, the first couple names I would like say like absolutely they are ahead of him. Then it becomes a little bit more debatable, and kind of what you think about Paolo Banchero.
More projection, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is Paolo Banchero going to take an All-NBA leap this year? Mobley is obviously like an incredible defender, and so his utility is a little bit different than what Jaylen Brown provides. Like, do you value that more than what Brown provides on any given night? He's better than those guys currently, I think.
I agree. But
it is a bit of projection because they're younger players and they have more upside, and you're kind of assuming that they're going to take these leaps in their careers, Also, I think people kind of overcorrect on Jaylen Brown a little bit, like he's still a wildly valuable player, and like a main reason why the Celtics, why you have that shirt right now, Greg, you know what I mean? Like he's a huge reason for them winning. I think he will be a huge reason for them becoming a contender again. It's just like, how are you going to add these certain wrinkles to your game to be a more well-faceted version of yourself? We just talked about Pascal a little bit, or mentioned Pascal. Like, Pascal was a guy that, even despite the Raptors not winning, basically every year added like a small wrinkle to his game, whether it was like fine-tuning the mid-range shot, working on his post-ups, working on the playmaking. It's like, how are you going to add more wrinkles to your game to become a more well-faceted player or well-rounded player? That's what the focus should be with Jaylen Brown next season.
So I think a guy that at least used to be in this, it maybe still is. We'll see. It was in this Brown Siakam category. It was Brandon Ingram. So this is gonna be my pivot
He was.
He was always kind of, it was that grouping, right? Like it just felt like they were like, who's actually the best out of this group? And it feels like Brandon Ingram has kind of fallen to the back of that list.
Maybe I'm mistaking this. This is all 2016 class, right? They're all 2016 class, right?
I know Ingram and JB, I'm pretty are the same year. If you would know Siakam off the top of your head better than I would.
Siakam is 2016, yeah.
So they're all in that same draft class. So I think it makes a lot of sense then that they were all in that same group and they're all wings. Yeah. They all kind of have these, can they keep adding? They have a lot of skill sets. And I mentioned earlier, like I think the Raptors are fascinating because they have a lot of guys that at least their top 6, I all think are good, but I think their contracts are maybe a little bit out of whack. So you're an actor as well, in addition to everything that you do here. So let's kind of set this up. Pitch to us. What is this Raptors? What's a good Raptors? Like, how do the Raptors are going to have a successful season? Like you said, you're not worrying about doing profiles on the 15, playing on the two-way guys. You're elevating that. You're going for the play-in, baby. What does that look like? Pitch us. Give us the season pitch.
Oh man. Well, so look, I agree that they have 6 or 7 talented players, like players that are probably not 6 or 7, like 5 starting level players.
I'm being generous to both teams when I was giving a few extra guys.
Yeah, of course. And then they have a bunch of young guys who are intriguing, and I honestly think those young guys probably end up swinging the season. Like how good Grady Dick looks. Grady Lick. Wow, what a slip.
Don't be licking the dick.
Jesus Christ. How good. It's August, baby. Let's look. You know what I mean? How good Grady Dick looks next season, entering his 3rd year, like how he's able to pop off. Jacoby Walter had a good second half of his rookie year. Can he add more to his game? So like some of the younger players might swing how deep this team looks next season. Really intrigued with Colin Murray-Boyles and how he factors into what they do. This is my pitch for the Raptors. Okay. They won 30 games last year, basically tripping over themselves, genuinely tripping over themselves. Like when they tried to lose, they won. When they tried to win, they would lose. It was one of the funniest seasons to watch because of that. And, they had a stretch in December where only Grady Dick and Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett were their only healthy starters. Grady Dick does not project to be a starter this season. That's why I don't kind of count him in that starting group. They went 1-16 in December. Actually, if you guys remember, you guys handed us a really tough loss. I think it was like you guys scored 130 points, beat us by 54, something along the lines of that. It was a disgusting, and that was to cap off the 1-16. It was like, hey, they are now 1-16 after a 50-point L. Really, really brutal stretch, and it was because of injuries. Like they just got decimated by injuries to start the year. Scotty Barnes missed a bunch of games. Emmanuel Quickly missed a bunch of games. So they pulled the plug pretty early on this. But then as they pull the plug, their schedule gets easier. And so they have Washington. They got Brooklyn a bunch. They got Utah a bunch. They had like a stretch of 20-25 games where they were playing such easy competition that they were trying to tank. They were trying to not start their guys. They would pull guys in the 4th quarter. They were pulling all these shenanigans, and they still ended up winning. And again, so my pitch here is they tripped over themselves, won 30 games. They've now added Brandon Ingram, who is clearly a talent addition for this team. If he stays healthy, if he plays like 50, 60 plus games, this team probably ends up, their over-under win total is 37.5. I'm absolutely taking the over on that. I think they will win more than 37.5 games. I think they will win more than 41 games. I think they have the way that they are structured financially. The way that they're structured financially, like they don't have any choice but to be competitive in every single game. Truthfully, like they have painted themselves into a corner to the point where they have now created a roster that has to be competitive. And so if they're not, then you got to ask a bunch of questions. If this team somehow falls flat on its face, you're looking at, okay, where's Scotty Barnes in terms of what we're looking at? Where's, these other guys and how they project moving forward? Because if they aren't successful, then a lot bigger questions that we got to ask about this Raptors team,
I love it. Ingram was my pick for like my guy to, I guess like comeback player of the year. I forget how we phrased it last pod, Will, but I picked Brandon Ingram and you were very surprised at why I picked Brandon Ingram. I've been high on him. I thought he got a, unfair reputation over the last couple of years. in New Orleans. I thought he actually was really good as a pick and roll ball handler. I don't think people give him enough credit. And he's got the size, right? So I think he could actually be the Raptors' best player. I don't know if you're thinking that's clearly Scotty Barnes. I'm not as high on Scotty as I once was, but I think Ingram is probably talent for talent the better player between the two of them. But the little gimmick I want to do with you really quickly, because we only got a couple minutes left here. I'm going to call this. I'm going to change the name of it right now. We'll change it on the fly.
It's all you.
I don't really believe it, but it's August. Okay. I want you to pick 3 teams that you think could make like an unheralded run to the conference finals next year. Because I am going to pick the Toronto Raptors as my team where I'm like, oh my God, the Toronto Raptors are in the conference finals.
That would be sick. That would be awesome. I'd be so down for that. Yeah, look, just based off covering losing seasons, seeing a conference finals run would be ecstatic. I would be ecstatic for that. In terms of like 3 teams, just 3 random teams, any team?
Yeah, any team.
Okay.
You can go east or west. Doesn't have to be just
Yeah. Let's go the Detroit Pistons. I'm gonna swing for there. I think they were awesome last year. I think adding.
I'm gonna call that your safety team, by the way. That's your safety team.
Okay.
Get a little more spicy.
Get spicier. Okay. All right. Damn. All right. Let me see. Let me pull up these standings here. You know, take a look, see what we got.
Got to have NBA.com pulled up in August, man. So you can go through those teams.
Like, okay, wait, Greg. Let me ask you then. Okay, so if Detroit is safe, is Atlanta safer? Like, are they a safer team to you, or are they spicier?
That's a little spicier to me.
Okay, so swap. Just take Detroit out. Let's put Atlanta in there. Yeah, let's put the Hawks in there. I think they have a chance. They've obviously like revamped their team this summer. Added Kristaps Porzingis. We'll see how healthy he is. I know you guys are very well versed in that topic. Yeah, that's probably the team that I would look for in the East. In the West,
hold on, real quick, S. Let me ask you a question, because this is in the news right now about the Hawks not offering Trae Young a contract extension. And I've mentioned a couple times here, I'm really fascinated at like these slots that are available. Would you give? I think the extension's like 4-year, $229 million, comes out to like 57. I see Greg's reaction. I'm very curious to know your like would. By all accounts, this kind of gets back to in a different way with Mazzulla. Like, he's earned it, right? I guess he's the face of the team, the face of the city, yada, yada, all this all-star, whatever. They did go to the conference finals one year. Like, you can make a case that he's earned it. Would you give it to him, or should they give it to him?
I would probably not. No, not yet. I think it's a prove it year for Trae Young, because they've built him probably the best roster he's ever had. And so I think they're doing everything with the intention of like, all right, man, we built a team that makes a lot of sense around you. This is a defense that probably will make up for a lot of your shortcomings on the defensive end. You've gotten better off of the ball. We're going to put you off the ball more this season, but you're going to be still doing the on-ball creator stuff. We've given you a beautiful pick and roll partner that you can work with. Jalen Johnson's going to be healthy. He's your second guy. Like, let's go to the conference finals. You know, that's my pitch to Trae Young. If you make it there, make a deep playoff run, make us believe that this team is worth investing.
Then here's your contract.
Then here's your contract. And I think he should be okay with that too, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, if it doesn't work in Atlanta with the situation that he has, maybe a breakup makes the most sense. Like, we saw it with De'Aaron Fox last year, and a team not giving that contract extension with Sacramento. It immediately started the trade rumors of like what might happen. I think this is a little bit different of a situation where the Hawks have clearly built a team that's competitive and clearly trying to win this year. Maybe that will give them a little bit more comfort knowing, hey, they still have a goal in mind. We can kind of just move forward and see what happens at the end of the year.
Yeah, I saw a gross stat the other day that the Kings are paying $95 million for Sabonis and Zach LaVine this year.
Yeah, they will not be in my sneaky, unheralded.
I had a feeling they would. That's why I wouldn't think I was stepping on anything here. Let's get a West team here, and then we'll get you.
Oh man, okay. One West team. Okay, damn. See, the thing is, like, unheralded. I don't know. Like, I could convince myself that 6 teams in the West can make the Western Conference Finals. Damn. Okay. You know what? Screw it. The Dallas Mavericks. Okay. Kyrie Irving ends up being healthy. He comes back in February. They're like the 6-7 seed. Cooper Flagg is clearly rookie of the year. Anthony Davis is having an first team All NBA type of season. D'Angelo Russell on the biannual exception has been awesome. Like all these things happening, and they end up making a Western Conference Finals run. They're clearly wildly talented defensively. They just need to get their guy back in Kyrie. Maybe that's enough to make a miraculous Western Conference Finals run. Why not? Screw it. Yeah.
I have heard a rumor defense wins championship. So I don't know.
I've heard. Yeah,
it's out there. I don't know. I don't know how truth there is to it. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Greg, what are you gonna say?
Well, give me one team for you.
Ooh, one team out west that could make a surprising,
or could be in the East.
Yeah, if you want to do East, do the Toronto Raptors. No, I'm just
I don't got that much belief. I'm interested in them, but
part of the Raptors is just like the East is just it's
terrible
this year, right? So like they have talent. It's not like their cupboard's bare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that'd be crazy. But
got a good coach.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, this is again, the West is so deep that like you can just rule out certain teams, and then it's like somewhat reasonable for almost every team that's below that like top tier that they get the right break. So like if I were to say Warriors, like, that doesn't feel very spicy, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going in on the retirement group, right? I'm just like, let's add Al Horford, and also I want to root for Al Horford again. Like I want to keep rooting for Al. So that's where I'm, because otherwise it's like the Grizzlies.
All right,
I don't believe
fucking
that.
king of the filibuster. Make your goddamn pick.
Fuck it. All right, we're in Austin. Let's go San Antonio. Wemby's here. The kids pop. De'Aaron Fox. People were acting like he's not like one of the top 8 point guards in the league when he signed that. Like he's actually good. Like I saw some crazy takes that were just reckless.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I actually like that more than my Mavericks pick, to be honest with you. Wait, Greg, before we get out of here, can you make your Raptors pick? Can you pitch it to me? I would love to hear. I mean, I get it. The East is garbage, yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada.
Okay.
The Raptors, electric boogaloo, the pitch. Let's hear it.
They just have like a bunch of guys that I've always been really high on, right? I loved Quickly when he was on the Knicks. I don't think he's quite fit. They haven't figured out what makes him special in Toronto yet. And I think like they haven't tapped into what was special in New York yet. I don't know if that means he's just not a starting point guard, but I think that there's, a lot of, his college teammate Maxey. I think they're very similar type players. I think that he could have like a Tyrese Maxey, who apparently grew 3 inches this summer. Like, what the hell is up with that? I think, yeah, you see him. There's a picture of him next to LeBron there. He's like an inch shorter than him. Quickly. I love Quickly. RJ Barrett. I've loved him since Duke. I think that he's one of those guys that, he came in with such high expectations in New York and he didn't live up to those expectations. I think he needed a change of scenery. You put him, north of the border where he belongs, where he's from. And I think that he can really flourish there next to Brandon Ingram, who I think is the missing piece, right? I think Scotty Barnes, they've been trying to make this the Scotty Barnes team. What's your name of your coach again?
Darko Rajakovic.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. But Darko, we call it Scotty Barnes, the face of the league or whatever, the future face of the league. Like that's too much for what Scotty Barnes is. They needed someone who was like a clear number 1 ball handler type that can run just like an efficient pick and roll. And I think Brandon Ingram really is that guy. Like I think that he can actually be that guy with the right pieces around him. And then you have Pirtle, who's one of the most underrated centers in the league. You put him, Isaiah Hartenstein, who's the better like float shot in the paint. Like Hartenstein doesn't miss there. I think Pirtle is even better at that shot than he is. And I think he's a better defender as well. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I think with those guys, the size that they have out there with those 5 guys, and then the one thing is going to be the shooting, right? Is can they find enough shooting with those 5 guys? Who is it Grady Dick that's coming into the lineup? That's, your 6th man. Is there somebody else that I'm not thinking of? I know there's not like a ton of NBA talent on the bench, which is, probably the issue with the team, but who else is there on the team? Jamal Shed, right? That's his name.
I would say like Ochai Agbaji is a guy that they're interested in just because like he was a good shooter for them last season. Jacoby Walter again had a rookie year, shot 40% towards the end of his rookie year. I like there's to your point. I think they're going to be an excellent defensive team, like probably a top 10 defensive team. The offense will be a little bit of a pulling teeth, especially in the half court. But I think that's why they got Brandon Ingram. It's to make tough shots. And if there's one thing that dude can do is like score in a pinch.
And Quickly's a pretty good defender. I think people think Quickly is like, a little wispier than he actually is. He's a pretty strong on-ball defender when he like really digs into his shorts.
Yeah, I think with him it was just he just had an unhealthy season. Like he played like 30 games or something like that last year, and so we didn't really get a chance for him to have like a full healthy year. And I think also having Ingram will allow him to be off the ball a little bit more, be that catch and shoot guy, be a guy who's like attacking closeouts for them. And that's probably more well suited to what he does, what he did in New York, and like what he thrived in. So yeah, I agree with you, man. There's a world in which this team it is better, much, much better than 37.5 games. A lot of things have to go right, truthfully, but that's honestly
everyone in the East.
Almost like especially everybody in that middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. Like after Cleveland and New York, and you can maybe talk me into like Orlando being in that same tier, and Detroit's going to be good, and we just talked about Atlanta, but like after those teams, there's just like a pile of teams that can swing one way or another. And it all just depends on a couple of factors going in different directions. Celtics are in that department. The Raptors are in that department. The Sixers, God knows what is going to be the situation there. It's just going to be really intriguing. I also think that will make the East inherently a little bit more competitive because some of these teams, especially out the gate, will not know whether they're trying to be competitive or not. And so they'll try to win as much games as possible. We'll see.
Well, NBA script is out, guys. Toronto Raptors going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You heard it here first on the Boston Celtics Green with MB podcast. Make sure you cite your sources. S, you're the absolute man. We always appreciate you coming on here.
Yes, sir.
For those listening, he is one of the co-hosts of the Athletic NBA Daily podcast. Are you guys still going daily in the off season? I hope for your sanity or not.
God, no. Okay. I mean, no, absolutely not. We all deserve a break. We all deserve to detach from basketball every now and then. We're taking a little bit of a break here. We'll be back in September. And we'll keep rocking.
Good for you guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah, of course.
Hell yeah. Add that to your rotation if it's not already in there.
And wear boxers when you go to massages, folks. that's one thing we've learned today. If you forget the Celtics, forget the Raptors, forget the Athletic NBA Daily. If you learn one thing, it's to wear boxers when you go to massages. Yeah. All right.
Hashtag unintentional slippage.
That's all I got, man. That's
it for it today, boys. We did it. We got weird. We had some fun. It's NBA in August. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. As always, appreciate you guys locking in with us. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow us, all that jibber jabber across all the different social medias. We appreciate and love you guys. We will catch you guys next week. Enjoy your week. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.